Jazzcast Pros.
Hey there, my graceful grinders. It's your girl, Dr. Pamala Brown-Grinion with the Grace and Grind podcast. And today I have one of my dear friends that's going to be chatting with us. And her name is Dr. Angelia Smith Wilson. She is the executive director of Friends in Recovery New York, which is a statewide advocacy organization. Dr. Angelia, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, glad to be here. Glad to be here, Dr. Green. Glad to be here.
So I just want to jump right in and get started. Can a sister get a raise? How's that?
Because sisters be needing raises too. Okay, let's start there. Sisters be needing raises. Okay, so we need to raise our voices to get some raises.
Absolutely. Welcome to Grace and Grind, the podcast redefining what it means to act like a lady, but think like a boss. All while helping female professionals navigate the intricacies of the workplace with poise, confidence, and grace.
This is a topic that's near and dear, not because a sister need a raise, but because this is what we do at Friends of Recovery New York. We are a statewide advocacy organization. We work to bring the voice to the voiceless, okay, in order so that policies can wrap around individuals in recovery and their families and all of those things. So it is a part of what we do every day, bringing voices. So it is not a leap and a jump to be talking now about pay equity. I kind of call it my side hustle, but it is the motivation to a lot of the work that I do, because it allows for me to carry the voice of my sisters to the bank, literally, right? I get it in. Whoever will listen to me as I talk about addressing the pay equities that we all face.
So how did you get started advocating with pay equity?
As I said, my job is to bring a voice to the voiceless. So I was initially, maybe about 2 years ago, approached from a colleague that I know that had been navigating the C-suite, as so many of my sisters are, and just trying to figure out, how do I make sense of this, right? Of this senselessness? How do I make sense of it? And because of the work that we do around legislation, I do a lot of research in particular areas when I'm looking to compare and contrast population and trends. Someone had just invited me to a roundtable discussion on it. So I had to do some research. I mean, I knew it and I felt it in my pocket all along, being in this world. But, like so many of us, we get so comfortable when we feel like, okay, we're earning a little bit, right? We're earning a couple of dollars now. We don't want to go in there and upset, folk. And so I was appalled. Dr. Green, when I started to really dive into the huge inequities. Okay, we talking almost 31 cents on the dollar that we make compared to white males. And that stopped me in my tracks. And then when you look at a comparison over a lifetime, it is millions of dollars that sisters have never or will never have access to with this current system, because of the lag behind that we have in regards to the pay equity. So I kind of just, once I saw this information, it was like, listen, I was never going back. Okay, I have been forever changed, as we all should. So that was the aha moment, as Oprah would say, that really shocked me right out of where I thought I was comfortable at.
So you've been in this movement and in the trenches for a while now. What do you think are the most significant barriers to achieving equal pay in today's workforce for Black women?
Well, again, I'm a policy nut, so I'm always going to go with the policy. These are instrumental in sustaining the current infrastructure that we have, right? The Modern Pay Act, trying to address the inequities, and it's the Paycheck Act, is modernizing the Equal Pay Act. So there is a current infrastructure that supports the practices that happen, right? And the practices that happen is that Black and brown women are not paid the same doing the same work. There are a number of women that I've talked to that when they finally ask for increases, it's like, well, we're so undeserving it when we have been the one who have stayed the longest, right? Brought in the most dollars, if that is the case, brought in the most customers, sustained the most customers, done our fair share of work. But when it comes down to it, we are the lowest paid at these jobs.
Now, this sounds so personal for you, Dr. Angelia. So let me just ask this burning question. Can you tell us about a time when you personally experienced a situation like this, when you knew that you were not receiving equitable wages or even fair pay as a Black female? Can you share a
Mm,
personal experience
mm,
with us?
mm. You taking me back. You taking me back there. You're getting me fired up already. You're getting me fired up. Because I'm kind of in politics, I'm going to
Right.
say that I had experience with a certain agency. I was leaving teaching. I had been teaching full time, and I had also had acquired a skill set with change management skills and strategic planning and program evaluation. So I had a diversified skill set. So there was an opportunity for me to go to a state position, right? And so I said, okay, wow, this is where it is, right? This, you're progressing up. State has excellent benefit packages, retirement, all of these things. And when I received, well, I was verbally told a range, but when I received the offer letter, when I tell you it was like 20 to almost $30,000 less, I was like, wait a minute, am I being punked? Like, what happened? Is there an inside agent that took $30,000 that I didn't know about? And so then I was met with all of these excuses. Well, the state has a thing, and it said that where you was paid your last job, you were paid this, and so we can only give you a certain amount over that. I said, well, is this not a promotion? Let me just get the terms correct here, right?
Right.
Promotion, right? To an executive level position in a state agency. Okay. I wasn't going to be the front office manager or as Jerry Seinfeld would say, not that there's anything wrong with that. Okay. But I was going to an executive level position. And I was like, and these are politically appointed positions. So the ranges are competitive for a reason because they want to attract the best talent and they want you to stay there. So I said, okay, well, wait a minute. The numbers are off. And
The
you're
math ain't mathing.
right, the math ain't mathing. Okay. Even before that term hit the street, it was not mathing with the sisters. And I swear a Black woman probably started that term. So so I was hurt. I was crushed, because I was so excited to take on this challenge. And I said, well, where's that at in the state? Is that in the handbook that I didn't get? Because, well, it's an unwritten rule. And I tell you, that was a slap in the face. So I did not just accept it. I said, well, I'm gonna have to say something. I can't just roll over at 30,000. So I was able to negotiate about $9,000 more. And I tell you, I was in a position where I felt like I was in a position with so many of us at once we advanced the VP level and now we're getting a political appointee. I felt like, well, and just take it and use it as a stepping stone. But I was hurt because I knew for a fact when I went to that position that my counterpart was not making what I was making. Because I started asking everybody. Everybody get real silent. Before this Transparency Act, You couldn't ask nobody about how much they was getting paid. You still can't ask certain Black people, but you could not ask. It was like I was asking, what's your size, your true size? Okay. So, but I kind of heard and put pieces together, and I knew it. I knew it. So, it was challenging not going in there every week, turning on the Black girl, because I knew that, I was making quite a bit less than especially the white male, as well as my counterparts.
Yeah, let's talk about not turning on the Black girl, because that could be a very touchy situation for some people that really don't understand what that means. And it certainly does not have to be a negative connotation at all, because, we're just cut from a different cloth, right?
Yes.
So, but how do we confront pay equities as Black and brown women without being perceived as being angry or difficult when we're trying to advance into these leadership roles?
I tell you, prayer, meditation, but more strategically, I think that one of the things that I often find. First off, I'm sometimes the only person in the room, but when there is another sister in the room, I already know that her I's are dotted and her T's are crossed. And that is something that we do very well. We do that very, very well. And so we just have to build our portfolio, right? And we have to constantly, when we bring something to the team that is innovative, that is new, it's like we have to name that move, right? We really do. And so what I mean by that, there was a number of efficiencies and different ways of looking at the work that we were doing, a different perspective when I was at the state that I brought to the table. And every time that we would be in a meeting and someone would say, well, like Angelia would say, and I would say, that's my property, right? And so when it is time to advocate for our worth, we need to bring up those pieces of property, that intellectual property that we haven't necessarily put a patent on, but they know that we brought it there, right? And so we need to be able to put that all together in a toolkit or in something, and package that together. Because I'll tell you, that is exactly what I did when it was time for raises or time to advocate for, well, when I came here, you said that I was going to be making this, and then the state had said I couldn't make this because of that. So, now it's time that I've been here, and based upon the things that I have done since I've been here, where the money at, right? And so that's what I would have to do. And I would tell people all the time, it's this anger that it's like, no, it's just wanting equity. It's right. Equity rage. It is not outright rage, right? But it is recognizing the disparities and having the ability to want to say something about that.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I can remember some instances very, very clearly where I knew I should be getting more. I knew I qualified for more, but somehow others would find a reason to find this most minute thing to qualify why more could not be granted, even though it's in the budget, but you can't have it. Right. And so it's that thing that we've been hearing all of our lives, where you have to work twice as hard or 3 times as hard to get half as much.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's really I've lived that.
I've
lived that, where I felt like, why am I feeling like I'm doing this backbreaking work as a college educated woman with skills? Like Liam Neeson, I have this, this special set of skills. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a special set of skills that I've acquired that I can transfer into this position to make it better. Why am I fighting, number one, to even transfer my skills?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So is it that you don't want to see me because you don't want to pay me? And I really like what you said about when it's time to put your intellectual property on the table and use that as a negotiating
You
tool.
have to.
So, you know what I mean? So like during your, what is that called when you have the supervisors
Your
are doing
performance evaluation.
your performance, you're
Mhm.
right. Those would be the times where, you should be putting your skills
So,
on the table.
but also even mid year, right? I think a lot of us are trained to, like when it is time for that performance evaluation, we're trained for then. But what I have learned is no, I probably in that last 2 years, quarterly was saying stuff to my supervisor. Oh, well, remember I did this, or, remember I did that, or because I'm telling you, you don't have a cheerleader sometimes. It is you. And we fight with that because of, our humility and who we are and all the complex thing that kind of makes us, make up us. We fight that. We don't like to put the light on us, right? We will like, well, yeah, I just saved us all kind of stuff, and I just really brought us out of something, but that's what I do. And it's like I learned, sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader sometimes at that stadium, right? And you can't just wait till you win that game. Part of my strategy was always, oh, if we're starting a new project, well, remember what I did on that last project? I wonder if I could do that on this one. Oh, here's my new strategy for that. So, also breaking out of the mode of waiting until the performance evaluation. And now that I have a staff, direct reports to me, and I'm telling you, the new folks, the younger folks, they picked up on this stuff. I mean, I'll have somebody who completed a project as they were supposed to do, and then that next day they're like, okay, well, I'm taking a day off, or I'm rewarding myself because you didn't reward me enough, so I am going to reward myself. And I'm like, I'm old school work ethic, so I'm like, well, that was your job. But really, I've learned to look at that like, that's how they stay ahead, and that's how, when it's time for them to young folks to advocate for increases, they drop it like that. And so that is definitely something that I've picked up on. And like I said, I used to wait to performance evaluations, and then I would try to wait 6 months. But I would recommend, at least if you're not comfortable with doing it in between evaluations, definitely at that performance evaluation.
That's a great strategy that I think all of the listeners should probably adopt, because so many times we tend to not speak up because this isn't a skill that's taught.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
We aren't really taught that it's okay as Black women to speak up on our own behalves and not wait for our supervisors to just give it to us.
Yes.
We aren't taught that it's okay to self-advocate for more money. And in fact, when you do training for preparing for an interview, you're told not to even ask about money.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that is, you don't ask. You just wait until they tell you what it is. The job pays this.
Let me tell you something. This is not my saying. This is something someone told me. It's the phrase Emily. Have you heard that? Early money is like yeast, right? You got to ask about it early, or you got to take care of yeast early for bread to rise or something. I'm going to get the correct thing. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, yes, putting that in there. But it's what it is to talk about money. And they meaning like dominant culture, they know that we don't like to talk about money because, you know, we want to get in there. We just want to be fair, all of those things. If you're not asking about money, then I don't understand. It's why we do the work that we do. I mean,
Right.
it's not like, that's the only thing that, we work for the money, but it's like, it's connected to your work. It's my skill set, So, this culture makes you kind of feel like you shouldn't be talking about the money. Now, there's a way to talk about the money, right? But the money has to be talked about. And I tell you, I was having a conversation, and these are all things that, like you said, I live them too, right? Even in my current position, I was talking to my husband last year or something. We were talking about that, and my husband's like, "Oh, did you, talk about your race?" And he knows me, and I was like, "Well, and he's like, See, this is the same stuff that you talk to people about, and here you are." And I had and I love that because it pushed me right into where I know I needed to go. And I know that it is uncomfortable talking about the money, but I tell you, when you practice it enough, it becomes easy. Okay.
Second nature.
It becomes easier. And I will tell you that going back to how do you ask and how do you do that? I have a workshop, Act Up, right?
Yes, I want to talk about Act Up.
And so what it is, it assists women, the Black women, because they say, "Oh, we don't want you acting up. We don't want the Black girl. We don't want you acting up." So I have an Act Up that will help you to, begin to assess where you are and hopefully bring you some strategies around being able to address your worth. Right. Because at the end of the day, the strongest advocate for you is you. Right. And that's what I do. I do advocacy, and I help to build strong advocates. So without doing the whole workshop, if you want the workshop, you got to get me there. But I'll tell you, the A stands for assessment. And I won't go through all of what it is because there's a lot of stuff. We walk through assessment and looking at certain things, and then there's a goal. The goal of this assessment is to be able to define your worth to yourself first, right? And then there's C. C is for courage. Everybody thinks confidence has to be it, but courage has to come before confidence, because the goal of courage helps you to be able to tap, right? And that's what the T is for. T is for tapping into treasures, right? And having the ability. And so we do a whole assessment on all of these things. So I'm just saying these things, but the workshop, we actually spend some time to do that. And so the goal of the T, tapping into your treasures, is to be able to help you develop a treasure map. And I'll tell you, there's a difference between a treasure map and a vision board, right? Everybody wants a vision board, but it is in fact a treasure map that you need. Okay. I won't go
Please explain that.
Well,
please explain that. Please explain that.
Well, a treasure map is different from a vision board. A vision board provides what you want to be, right? But the treasure map shows the tools to get there by identifying your treasures. So, people will cut out stuff and put it on a thing, manifest, and I know for us in our community, we know that God's going to make a way, right? But you also have to identify your own treasures. So we go through a series of helping you to do that. And so now you have a treasure map, right? And you can also do a vision, but I found that the treasure map really helps you to identify your tools to get you there. Okay. And then the U is because we did the act, so now we're in the up. So the U is sorting out the unknowns, because this is where the sabotage comes with us, right? So we identify all of these unknowns, and people think, "Oh, what does the unknown do?" Well, the unknown breeds a lot of emotions, and it is these emotions, right, that breed humiliation, resentment, regret, that keeps us immobile, right? Scared to ask, right?
Yes.
And so the goal there is to be able to develop a mental strategy to logically deal with the unknown. So we go through a whole exercise for that. And then the P is for passion, right? Dominant culture will tell you, you don't need to be passionate about your work anymore, right? We're kind of moving away from that. People are saying that. That is not the case, okay? Passion is the essence of our humility. It is the essence of our worth. It's how we connect worth to something, right? So I have this whole empowerment workshop that I go to, and I swear I want to help Black women act up, okay,
Not
on these
act up,
act
act
up,
up.
okay, on these jobs, because the whole thing was it's kind of a spin on, well, they expect us to act up, right?
Right,
But we're
right.
acting up in a different way now. Right.
Exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
going through this workshop and having folks to identify these things and walking away now with a tangible strategy that they can employ like almost immediately. I'll tell you, the last time I did this workshop, women were right there like, what? Yes. Uh-huh. And we were identifying things, right? And we, especially the unknowns, because folks do not, the unknowns gets us all the time. And we
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
have a strategy to deal with that, because those are the ones that keep us unmobile. And so we were all sitting there. It was like we was in church. We were like, yes, uh-huh. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. And so folks I had went to high school with were like, girl, you act up in here today. And so so that's ultimately I want to help us to kind of use our own innate abilities, because I tell you, Black women, listen, if you tell us to master something, you teach it to us on Monday, by Saturday, we've mastered it. And not only that, we've created 3 workarounds that someone didn't even think about, right? Because of the way that we've had to adapt and just really be protective of our skills and protective of who our kind of our like superpowers, right? That it's just really, really challenging to kind of navigate. And and so I've also had women who are not Black and brown attend some of the ACT UP sessions as well. So it does go across, but I mean, I mainly kind of created this out of a means for strategies for Black and brown women. But I've had women who were not of Black and brown descent who were still able to appreciate the ability to want to act up. I literally had a
Yeah.
white woman who was there who said, I'm going to act up. And I said, okay,
Right.
all right.
Because the inequity is with women too, in general,
Yes,
regardless of how you identify, right? It
absolutely.
is, you
Absolutely.
know.
Yep.
So, how would you say the intersectionality of race, class, and gender? How would you say that impedes pay equity?
Oh, God. I mean, it is really.
Because that's a trifecta.
It is. And unfortunately, it is all those things that has an effect on the Black woman, right? Because all of those things intersect for us, right? We don't get the luxury of being not having all of those things intersect for us. When we walk in a room, all of those things are there, right? As compared to our counterparts, when they walk in a room, it may be 2 sections of that, and then something else that's not as exposed, right? Maybe, if orientation, if they don't want to disclose that, they don't have to disclose that. As a Black woman, we walk in kind of disclosed. Those things are there, right? And so what I have found is that I've had to accept that reality, but create a reality for myself that allows me to see the limitations of that and to wiggle in between those limitations so that I find my purpose. And then if that brings the dollars, that helps a lot as well, right? But at the end of the day, it is about being able to find a strategy that allows you to find your purpose with grace, which is why I love the podcast name, right? Because I tell you, we extend so much grace. I literally had my white staffers say to me, wow, just the grace, and I'm like, they see it, how we just have to, with the restraints and all the things, So for me, it's been about understanding that all of those things intersect and they are quite real in this world. And I can let it disempower me, or I can not let it disempower me and search for my purpose. and settle on that.
Yes. So, I have a movement that I am kind of implementing as well. And you said something that made me think about it when you said we're expected to act up.
Mm-hmm.
We're expected to come in with a certain amount of bravado in our attitude and in our voice and our demeanor, right?
Yeah.
And so I work with a group of students every month, predominantly Black and Brown females, and I explain to them that if we are going to dispel or debunk or demystify the myths,
yes,
which are not really myths anymore, because a lot of us do perpetuate this behavior that is perceived. A lot of us do perpetuate it. The only way for us to live it down is to stop. Because the reflection is not just on themselves. The reflection is on the entire populace of Black and Brown women, because we are expected to act up. Right. And then when we do, it's like, I knew she had it in her. She gave us that polished etiquette professional, but I knew she had that in her. I knew it was in there.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
You know what I say to that, Dr. Grinion? It takes a Malcolm and a Martin for a movement, right? Sometimes we need that, because by finding my purpose, I stand in solidarity with my sisters that will be like, no, what you have said, right? But because I know I love the Malcolms, right? And I understand my purpose, and I'm more of the Martin, right? So when I go somewhere and someone is acting out of character from the dominant culture and expecting something of me, I pull from that grace, and I set a standard, right? That so that they understand that, oh, and I know that characterizes me, that categorizes me sometimes as, you're different. You're one of the different ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with that, but I also stand in solidarity with the Malcolms, okay? And around, because we need all that for the movement. We really do. Because we are not a homogenous group. And I love that about us, right? And so I just know that I hope that they are walking in their purpose. And if their purpose is to kind of act up in that way, then I stand in solidarity. But I know how I am, and so that's how I look at us, right? I know we're not homogenous, but I do know that we need them all for the movement. We really do.
I was just dealing with something today, and I was explaining with one of my dear friends, and I said, I could come out of character and act up. Because act up is in there, right? It's not gone. Just because I'm polished and professional does not mean the hurt and the betrayal and all of the things that have happened to me does not still reside in me. And you have to be careful about calling those things to the surface, because you really don't want them, right? Number one, you don't really know what you're asking for. But I had to take a step back, because I do understand that those feelings can erupt when they are agitated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had to purposefully, intentionally, and intuitively go inward, and simmer myself and say, boom, boom, don't come out. Right? Because boom was like, you sure you show, right? You show, right?
Yeah.
And so, I had to really go inward and temper the boom in me, right?
Yes.
The boom in me, because the boom was starting to erupt. And I had to say to myself, you've worked too hard to become the person that you've become. You've worked too hard to solidify your reputation in this community. You can't afford to abandon your own personal declaration of independence. You don't have the luxury of entertaining, right, the boom. you don't have the luxury of doing that. So my personal constitution and my own personal declaration of independence, I had to tap in
Yeah.
to my inward crown,
Yeah.
right? Because my crown is inward. It's not on my head, it's inward.
Yeah.
I had to identify with the inward, the innate queen that is in me,
Yes.
and not relegate to the boom quisha that was being called out.
Well,
Okay, boom
yeah.
is short for boom quisha. Okay.
Okay.
So I had to temper.
Yeah.
And how often do we have to do that? Because it's being called forth.
Oh, I tell you, I mean, it's James Baldwin that talks about the silent rage that we walk around with every day being a Black person in America. And I say that it is so true. It is, you say boom quisha, but that silent rage is really what we're all dealing with, right? Each and every person. And some of us can control and name it, boom quisha, right? It can control that. But that's why I say I stand in solidarity with the individuals, because that's the piece that we're all level set on, right? Whether, I'm in the room and I have a terminal degree versus my sister who has no degree, right? I know the equalizer for both of us, no matter my economic level or my educational level, is the silent rage that we walk around with being Black in America, right? And so that's the solidarity that so when I see that or whatever, I don't necessarily go, oh God, that's a bad thing. I just say, you know what, sis, I'm yet but one more of those away, So I just try to recognize that silent rage, and I try to, like you said, go inward. And I understand. I try to settle it and say, that's why I said I accept the reality for what it is, but my purpose is greater than this reality, right? And so I just go there, because that rage will consume you. It really will consume you. And I think that that's a lot of things that when we talk about, I know we're getting a little off subject, but when we talk about all of these things around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more specifically anti-Blackness, right? That we don't talk about anti-Blackness, but it is that rage, that silent rage that we don't even address in these equity trainings, right? Because I don't know if we're afraid to. I don't know if we don't want to further victimize ourselves or want to be victims, but that is very real. And we need
It
to
is
start having
real.
conversations about that silent rage, because of all of the things that, happen to us, simply because of, who we are in that moment. And
Right.
so,
Right.
and when we hear stuff, I remember I was on a call and one of my colleagues, not myself, stopped the call and said, listen, we're going to have a moment of silence. This was when Sister Massey had just been gunned down, right? And she was like, no, y'all need to understand that there could be some people on this call, and this was a statewide call. And she said, y'all need to understand that there could be people on this call, Black people right now, hurting because of what has happened. So we need a moment to settle the rage. And I was like, in my head, I was like, go ahead, Malcolm. But I was like, yes, yes, because I had become so complacent in that moment, right? That because that rage will, I was like, I gotta simmer it down. I gotta simmer it down. But it's times like that when we need to make space for the rage. And she did that day. And I was just like, that really helped. Sure, it made a lot of people uncomfortable, but that wasn't for a lot of people. That was for the Black and brown people on that call that was hurting. So I think, as we talk a little bit more about this, and as we kind of, it's still all relative to the subject, is, one of the things that I'm always challenged with is making space for that rage to be seen and heard in a where it can be kind of, you can get it out, because it did allow us in the room who are Black and brown in that moment just to be like, yeah, you know what I mean, for a moment. and then we went back to it. But yeah, we need those spaces because, like you said, it's very challenging.
It really is. And, it's all about, for me, the rage happens when I know my worth, but you blatantly disregard it, you disrespect it, you overlook it, you ignore it. You see me,
Yes,
you see me,
yes,
you see me, and you know my worth, but it's kind of like, you little black girl, go sit down over in a corner and take what I give you and like it and be quiet about it, right? And then that's when the rage happens. It's like, I've worked too hard. I have too much student loan debt.
right,
Okay.
right,
I,
right.
this
Come on,
is, this
Biden,
is,
with the
this is
student
a,
loan debt. Come
yeah,
on, Biden.
this is a deal breaker. This is a
Right,
non-negotiable for me.
right.
You know what I'm saying? So you definitely have to know your worth. Number one is, you got to know your worth. But I just want to end with you offering some strategies or tips for how can we want to act up, and in a way that is politically correct. You know what I mean? What are some
You want to stay
steps?
out of
What are some
jail. You
steps
want
that
to
we
stay
can
out of
take? You
jail.
exactly. What are some steps that we can take, to act up and fight for this pay equity, gracefully, while we're grinding towards this pay equity? How
Yes.
can we do this gracefully and not abandon who we are, who we were created to be? How can we do this with grace and with elegance and with a style, and not boomquisha?
Right,
How
right.
can we do that? How
Well,
can we do that?
again, I will go back to first, folks can reach out to you for my information. I do it is designed to be a 4-hour workshop, but I've condensed it in some instances to 2 hours because we really need time to kind of walk through each stage of ACT UP. But in lieu of having a session, personal and professional development, because it's classified as professional development, but for me, it's very personal too. And it involves a lot of the personal. So it really is a personal and professional development workshop. So, in lieu of that, what I would say is that finding out what are those things that are unique to you, right? And then, what are, like you said, the deal breakers? I think that these are some basic things that we can look at and that will help us, right? Without going through a whole workshop, which is designed to kind of walk you through all that. But more importantly, just having the ability to know your own assets that you bring, right? If you're good at braiding hair and or making tea or whatever the case may be, center your talents around that, and don't be downplaying it in any way. And that's another thing that we do, right? We are just so adaptive and creative because we've been made to be. So just kind of stay true to your nature, right? But find your nature, look for it. We spend a lot of time in here talking about fear and facing that and what it means and being able to look inward and having the ability to do that. And some of us may require, some folks are saying, well, is it safe for me to open that door? Well, we can have some conversations about that. And some people may require additional, help with being able to do that. If they face some deep rooted trauma that doesn't allow them to do that. Because I don't like to open any doors I can't close, right? So we try to scratch the surface around that, but look for your talents, know them. I have a quote that says, put them on a t-shirt so that people see them, right? And what I mean by put them on a t-shirt is just wear them. Let people know that you do these type of things. Don't kind of downplay your light. And you don't have to, build this whole block in a day, right? A village is a one hut at a time, one house at a time, right? In order to get all of this together, it will take some building this house first and then looking at that house and starting the foundation for the other ones. But ultimately, you're worth it. Everyone is worth it, right? You're more than worth it. So you just have to start
Yes.
it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you. And it's so good to see you.
It is amazing what you are doing. I think that, we need this. We need this kind of pump and polish and poise in our lives. And I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, there you have it, my graceful grinders. You have heard it here first from Dr. Angelia Smith Wilson and your girl, Dr. Pamala Brown-Grinion, and the Grace and Grind podcast. Tune in 2 weeks for our next hot topic. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to listen in, but it is going to be a treat. So in the meantime and in between time, like, share, and matter of fact, love it, and share. Tell your other sister girlfriends about it and come on back in 2 weeks and get down with us again. Until next time, have a graceful time while you're grinding it out. Take care.